For my friends who enjoy horror movies, I've got an exciting and thrilling film to share with you today. Released in 2023, Lullaby features a bizarre and twisted plot, intense and continuous high-energy scenes, and a chilling atmosphere that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Grab your friends and watch it together. The story begins. John and Rachel are a young couple, new parents. As they look down at their peacefully sleeping child, they feel an overwhelming sense of happiness. But little did they know that a package sent from Rachel's hometown would shatter this blissful life forever. Rachel opened it and discovered that her mother had sent her sister's deceased baby's belongings, including toys and clothes, along with an ancient yellowed music book. However, the couple had no idea that the lullaby in the music book could summon a demon. Months pass, and their baby enters the most difficult stage, crying endlessly unless he is held by Rachel. Physically and emotionally drained, Rachel accidentally came across the book again in the closet. Seeing that her husband had already translated the contents, Rachel decided to give it a try. Sure enough, as soon as she softly sang a few lines of the lullaby, her son immediately stopped crying. However, while Rachel is singing, she doesn't notice that the mirror outside the room suddenly cracks, as though something is trying to break through. After the baby falls asleep, the couple finally has a chance to relax. But that night, strange things start to happen. In the middle of the night, Rachel wakes up groggily and instinctively glances at the baby monitor. She sees something flash by, which confuses her. When she looks more closely, she sees a face at the side of the crib. Terrified, she rushes to the baby's room but finds nothing there. She assumes the monitor is malfunctioning and throws it into the closet. Just as Rachel tries to go back to bed, the parrot in the living room suddenly begins squawking, and there's a strange banging sound coming from the other room. Rachel thinks it's just someone at the door.
John?
But when she peeks through the peephole, there's nothing outside. She brushes it off, thinking it's just her mind playing tricks on her. What she doesn't realize is that the mirror in the living room is continuing to crack more and more. The next morning, while the baby is still sleeping, Rachel decides to surprise her husband with an intimate moment. But when she hugs him from behind, her husband suddenly sees a terrifying face in the mirror. Rachel thought her husband was disgusted with her, so she angrily pushed the baby stroller out the door. In addition, the house also needed a new baby monitor. She had just pushed the stroller to the baby section when the monitors on the shelves suddenly started malfunctioning, the screens flickering, and a demonic figure slowly began to materialize. The store suddenly plunges into darkness, and Rachel assumes it's a power outage, calling out for help from the staff. Just then, a demon suddenly appeared beside the otherwise empty shelf, attempting to snatch Rachel's child. As a staff member arrived, everything around them instantly returned to normal. From the staff member's confused expression, it was clear that she had no idea what had just happened. Terrified, Rachel could only numbly take her child and head home. But the strange events didn't end there. That evening, as Rachel sat in the living room, holding her child, staring blankly, suddenly the sky outside lit up with lightning, and in the next moment, the house was plunged into darkness. At that moment, Rachel seemed to hear the sound of a baby crying, but her child was clearly in her arms. Who was crying? Rachel steeled herself and went to the nursery, only to find another child in the crib. She quickly pulled aside the blanket, only to find that it was just a stuffed toy. But at that very moment, the wardrobe behind her was suddenly pushed open by a dark claw. At this point, Rachel was too terrified to go back inside. She decided to wait downstairs for her husband to come home. She told her husband that there was something evil in the house, but when he came home and searched, he found nothing. He even accidentally killed their beloved parrot. But Rachel swore she had truly seen a ghostly woman with a grotesque face. After hearing his wife's description, John suddenly stood up and grabbed the lullaby book. He pointed to an illustration in the book and told his wife that he had also seen that ghostly image in the mirror that morning, which was why he had been startled and pushed her away. However, the couple preferred to believe it was just postpartum depression and the stress she was under, and they never suspected the book had anything to do with the supernatural. Still, they felt the book was ominous, so they decided to throw it away. But that night, something strange happened. In the early hours, the baby started crying again. John, woken by the sound, got up to comfort the baby. But when he followed the sound of crying, he ended up at the garbage room downstairs, and to his astonishment, he discovered that the eerie wailing was emanating from that very lullaby book. John realized that something was wrong with the book, so he took it back and started studying the illustrations more carefully. Meanwhile, Rachel, who was trying to lull the baby to sleep in their bedroom, once again encountered something strange. Just a moment ago, she had seen her son right next to her, but with the strange sound that followed, in the blink of an eye, the child vanished. Then, the crying sound came from under the blanket. Rachel was horrified. She was worried her baby might be suffocating, so she hurriedly crawled under the blanket to search for him. But it felt as though she had entered some sort of void. No matter how hard she searched, she couldn't find her son. Suddenly, she felt something. In the next moment, Rachel was startled, desperately pulling herself out from under the blanket, only to find her adorable son right beside her. Her husband, John, rushed over after hearing the commotion and finally realized the severity of the situation. Consequently, the couple decided to split up to tackle the mystery. John took the child to seek an exorcist, while Rachel sought out the previous owner of the book, her sister Vivian. However, several years ago, her sister had suddenly suffered a mental breakdown and, in a tragic turn of events, accidentally killed her own child, after which she was confined to a psychiatric hospital. Upon hearing that their mother had sent the lullaby book to Rachel, Vivian's first question was whether her sister had sung the lullaby from it. When she learned that Rachel had come because of the book, Vivian finally revealed the truth. The book contained a demon, Lilith. Vivian explained that it was because she had sung the lullaby that her son had been taken by the demon. Meanwhile, John learned from the exorcist that Lilith was the first woman created by God. She was made to be Adam's wife, and whenever they were together, Adam would sing this lullaby to her as a symbol of love. But later, God expelled Lilith from the Garden of Eden. There were rumors that she had slept with wolves and given birth to a disabled child. When Lilith saw Adam and Eve's perfect children, jealousy consumed her. From that point on, she began stealing Adam and Eve's children, until God heard the prayers of Adam's descendants and cast Lilith into the underworld. However, Lilith, determined to continue taking perfect children, embedded a curse into the lullaby. Whenever mothers sang the lullaby, they would unknowingly summon Lilith from the underworld. This demon was so powerful that even exorcists were no match for her. She introduced John to another powerful exorcist for help. Seeing that it was getting too late, John had no choice but to take the child and head home. But as soon as they got back, he realized the faucet had been left running. He placed the baby down and went to the bathroom to fix it. He didn't realize that the bathroom door had silently closed behind him. Meanwhile, a two-headed, symbiotic monster appeared, targeting the child alone in the living room. The monster knocked over a vase, and sharp shards scattered on the floor, dangerously close to the child. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Rachel returned home. Along with her, she brought Vivian. As soon as they entered, they covered all the mirrors in the house with cloth. It was said that demons could enter and exit through mirrors. At that exact moment, John received a mysterious phone call.
I understand you have a book.
Who is this?
Your rabbi said you need help, John.
After hanging up, he immediately left the house and went to meet the exorcist who had called him Rabbi. Rabbi quickly examined the book and realized that the demon was in the middle of performing a ritual. The ritual had 3 steps. The first step was to sing the lullaby to summon Lilith. This step had already been completed by Rachel. The second step was to stain the environment with unclean blood. That's when John remembered that a few days ago he had accidentally killed their parrot, and its blood had stained the floor. Now the demon only needed the last step, to obtain the child's blood in order to take the child away. Sure enough, as John sought Rabbi's help, the demon had already set its sights on the child in the crib. While Rachel was deep asleep, the demon silently approached the crib. But at that moment, the child suddenly began to cry, waking Rachel up, and she quickly picked up the baby. Vivian arrived shortly after and took the baby from Rachel, telling her to rest. However, behind Rachel's back, Vivian secretly pulled off the cloth from the mirror and began singing the lullaby to summon Lilith. Rachel, who had been washing her face in the bathroom, heard the familiar song and immediately realized something was wrong. But by the time she rushed back to the nursery, it was too late. Vivian had already pricked the child's palm with a needle. The third step of the ritual had been completed, and all that remained was for Lilith to appear and take the child away. The reason Vivian did this was to strike a deal with the demon, exchanging her sister's child for her own lost child. Since learning that Rachel had given birth, Vivian had asked their mother to send the book, praying every day that Rachel would sing the lullaby. Meanwhile, Rabbi handed John a candlestick and an incantation, telling him that these items could help drive Lilith away. John, still somewhat skeptical, rushed back home. But halfway there, the demon suddenly appeared. John abandoned the car and ran, a strong intuition telling him that the child was in danger. Sure enough, Vivian, driven mad with longing for her own child, knocked Rachel to the ground and watched as Lilith took the baby away. When Rachel woke up and realized that both her sister and her child had vanished, she nearly lost control. But in the next moment, Vivian reappeared from behind the mirror and dragged Rachel into it. Just as John rushed home, he found a monstrous creature lying in bed. He immediately realized that Lilith had already taken the child. To his horror, he also saw Rachel trapped inside the mirror. Before John could ask what had happened, Rachel was suddenly pulled away from the mirror by an unseen force, falling into a heap of dead babies. Nearby, Lilith's two-headed baby servant was clutching Rachel's foot, trying to drag her into the pile of corpses to bury her. In this critical moment, Vivian intervened and saved Rachel. She told Rachel that to find her child, she needed to softly call his name. Sure enough, once Rachel calmed herself down and did as Vivian suggested, she heard the familiar cries. Without hesitation, she followed the sound, desperate to find her child. Meanwhile, outside the mirror, John lit the candlestick given to him by the rabbi and began searching for his wife's reflection in all the mirrors of the house. Though Rachel could see her husband, her voice couldn't reach him. Suddenly, all the lights in the house went out, and the demon appeared with a violent force. It grabbed the candle holder from John's hands and blew out the flame. Fortunately, John recited the incantation, forcing the demon back step by step, and the candlestick reignited. Meanwhile, in the mirrored world, Rachel finally found the room where the child was kept, but there were hundreds of children in the room. To stop Rachel, the demon intentionally made all the children cry at once. However, the demon had underestimated the power of a mother's love. Rachel managed to find her child and was about to leave when Lilith appeared. Lilith snatched the child away and shoved Rachel to the ground. As a mother, Rachel desperately charged at Lilith, determined to fight for her child, but how could she possibly defeat the demon? Just as Lilith was about to kill Rachel after putting the child down, Vivian appeared, holding a broken mirror shard and stabbing Lilith. Vivian quickly handed the child to Rachel, urging her to escape with the baby. She would hold off Lilith. Vivian, of course, was no match for Lilith. Within a minute, she was killed, becoming another of Lilith's puppets. Fortunately, in the final moment, Rachel followed the light and found the mirror where her husband was. She slammed into it, breaking through, but Lilith followed close behind, emerging as well. John immediately used the candle holder and the incantation to force Lilith back. The couple, finally surviving the ordeal, looked at their child, only to realize that the baby in Rachel's arms was not their own, but Vivian's child. It was then that Rachel realized their child had been swapped, for nothing but a mother's love could drive a woman to sacrifice herself without a second thought. And with that, our story concludes for today. See you next time.